Welcome back, and in this week, we're fixing this model. My first issue with this model is the center of gravity for this model is way too far forward. It takes very little force to push it over, which is going to lead to damaging this model or damaging other models in your collection. Another issue I have with the model is the head direction. I don't know if it's designed this way or if I had a defect, but mine is looking up, and I don't know really why a giant would be looking up and not down at your players or at other models. My third complaint is this model seems to be 3D printed, and removing the layer lines and the mold lines is very hard. My last complaint is missing parts. Mine came without a right hand. I don't know if other people have this issue, but yeah, it was very disappointing. And I understand why you would want to 3D print the master to make the molds, but I don't understand why they didn't try and remove some of those layers. Like, this one has egregious layer lines that you can almost count, which leads to the reason why would you mold it after. I know it's for ease of production, but you have layer lines and mold lines, which is a lot of work to get rid of. Now in this brief section, I took one of the bases and I put a dab of super glue on it, and I tried to cut a wooden dowel to the angle I wanted the model to fly at. After that, I made a template for some foam rocks I wanted to cut out and make a tactical rock around the wooden dowel to make it look less like she's just on a rod and more like she's leaping off something. After I glued them all together, I added some toothpicks for strength. Midway through the drying time, I was getting frustrated with the model, so I grabbed the head and tried to force it into a funky position, a better position, and it came off. So we did some surgery and glued her head back on in a better position, a more regal position where she looks like she's looking at her magic and the players and not into the sky. Well, after I undid her head, I didn't really need the tactical rock anymore, so I kind of carved it into a base that I could glue her base onto and try and fix that lean by angling the base a little bit. Well, first you have to sand the base because they're very smooth and glue doesn't want to seem to stick to them, so yeah, a little bit of a texture and it helps the glue adhere. After it was glued down, I added some spackle. Mine was old because it's supposed to be pink and it'll dry gray, but it's already dry. So I wetted my hands real good, wetted the base, and seeing if I could smear enough on there that it'll stick, and then I covered it in a nice Mod Podge layer, and then finally I covered it in a PVA layer just to seal it in nice and tight. Then I added some super glue, and there she is, before paint. Alright, if you're used to painting minis, I don't know if you'll actually find any of my tips helpful because I kind of skip around and do weird steps, go back and fix things, and so here I'm layering down my dark blue color. This is the color I want to be the darkest of the skin color. And I want to go almost to a, not a white, but I want to get pretty close to a bright pale blue in the highlights. So I'm layering in the dark, and then I'm going to come over with a brighter blue, and then finally a almost pale blue. Now that I've mapped out where I want my highlights and my lowlights, I'm actually going to wet blend on this model. And wet blending is pretty easy. You just kind of have your model just with a thin glaze of water, and then you're going to put your dark paint in the darkest area and your lightest paint on the top, and then you're kind of just going to mix the paint on the canvas, or on the model as it were. Sometimes you have to add more light or more dark in the area that you want to be lighter or darker, but this is the easiest I've found to make good blends, and it's rather quick. I don't think people do this because they're scared that they'll ruin the model, and I gotta be honest, this is a toy. And if you're scared to break your toy, just buy a new toy. And you can always paint over this. It's paint. I think people just get really down. Like I heard a saying the other day, perfect is the enemy of good. So trying to be perfect on a model is gonna end up you hating the model forever, because you've essentially ruined it in your own mind, even though it's a good paint job. Alright, I layered the cloak and all the other cloth bits a nice green color. It's not until later that I realized I made Loki from Marvel, and I think that's just a happy accident. We all kind of have happy accidents here, so Bob Ross is right. No mistakes. Happy accidents. I put a nice gold on all the armor and all the trim, and I think it really pops. It's probably not the best true metallic metal because I didn't shade it or add a wash to anything here. Alright, now I'm gonna attempt to make a crystal on her shoulder. So first I started with the darkest blue again, and then on all the upper facing ones I layered in a lighter blue color. Now I took that lightest blue and I made it actually the shadow color for the clouds on her lapel, her shoulders, and then I came over and I dry brushed it with white to try and blend in the blue to the white, and I don't think it didn't pop as much as I wanted to, so I actually came back in with a darker blue. Now I'm trying to contrast colors here, so this is my attempt at it. I really tried to make it not look that busy, so I covered the top in a brown, and then I covered it all in a black wash to really darken down the whole base. And then I came back in with an orange dry brush. Now after fixing just a little bit, we're gonna see a before shot, and then the grand reveal. This was a fun project. I really liked that I got to fix it. Overall, I think it looked very nice. in the end. Well, if you enjoyed this video, think about liking and subscribing. Until next time, happy crafting. Goodbye.